Hello and welcome to this opening explorations video, and today I'm going to try and do an introduction to the Busch-Gass Gambit. Some of you may have never heard of this opening. I'd never heard of it until a viewer brought it up a while back. And anyway, let's take a look at this. So this is the opening setup for this Busch-Gass Gambit. If I go back to the very beginning, we have e4, e5, knight to f3 attacking the pawn here, but instead of defending that pawn, bishop to c5 is played. And so this is the Busch-Gass Gambit. You can just take this pawn on e5. It looks like most often white will play bishop to c4, but knight takes e5. It looks like white wins the most with that, so definitely want to take a look at that. But I guess since bishop to c4 is most often played, we could go ahead and check that out first. And here knight to c6 is played. But at this point, we've transposed into a Giocco piano Italian game, the quiet Italian game, which is probably, not what black wanted. And now things are more calm and it's a normal opening. But since we're not covering the Italian game, let's go back and look at the Busch-Gass Gambit. Now, most beginners, they're probably going to go after this pawn, and that's the second most played move. White wins the most with that, so let's take a look at that. So here, the knight captures the pawn, and played most often is knight to c6 here. So after this move, it looks like it's 50-50. Well, 8 moves where they just retreat, staying ahead a pawn. But black would have a lead in development. So might as well take a look at that first. What do they recommend here? Well, it looks like d5 is played most often, immediately attacking the unprotected pawn. And then after capture, queen captures. Well, it's starting to look dangerous as far as development, because 3 pieces are developed by black and only 1 for white. So here, knight to c3 is usually played, attacking the queen. And now we have queen to h5. This could be dangerous because the bishop could come down here, targeting the knight. Let's see what normally happens. Queen to e2, or excuse me, bishop to e2, breaking that pin to the queen, which is not really much of a pin. I mean, you could just move and queens would be traded. But now they recommend bishop to g4. Then what? Knight to e4, attacking. So, I don't know. Things are kind of complicated here. What do they recommend? Castling queenside. Then you have h3. Now, of course, you can't capture that bishop or the queen would capture the rook. So knight develops and, oh, wow. Yeah, that just allows you to capture here, and white went on to win. First, you have that. Bishop takes, queen takes. And white can finally castle, and things have dissipated a little bit here as far as the attack. All right. That's just one way the game could go. Let's go back here. and see how things could be, a little more complicated. After knight takes, knight to c6, instead of retreating back, probably most of the time you're going to have this capture. And this is kind of like the Stafford Gambit, if any of you are familiar with that. So after capture, now the bishop is opened up here, and let's see what is recommended. I think with the Stafford Gambit, there's usually an attack on this pawn. Maybe the knight is already up here. So we're just going to go ahead and fortify that pawn. Now the knight is jumping up here. So this is closer to a Stafford Gambit type of game. Bishop to e2 is recommended. h5, h3, queen up to d4, which threatens a capture of this pawn. So rook to f1, apparently that is the best move to play. All right, rook to f1. And white wins 58% of the time there, where if white castles, they only win, 13% of the time. So let's take a look at this. We'll do the rook to f1 first, and then we'll come back to the other one where white castles and usually loses. So rook here to protect that pawn because of this battery lining up on it. And now we have bishop to e6 played most often, just developing another piece. But white wins more often with that move, with bishop to e6. So queen to d6, it actually likes that better. As far as for black is about even with that. So if bishop to e6 is played, I guess we could take a look at that. Then you have c3 attacking the queen. The queen will have to run. If it goes back to here, now we can start chasing pieces. Bishop retreats. E5, now the knight is under attack. Knight to d5. And from here, there are different options. One of them, you could capture here. That's a possibility. And then white just goes up, another pawn? All right, let's go back a little bit, see what the other options are. Okay. Instead of bringing that out, this move keeps things even in this position. So what we want to do here is once again play c3, or we could play knight to c3, but here we're threatening to chase that bishop. So the queen jumps in here attacking the pawn. We can just protect that with bishop to f3. Bishop drops back. Now they recommend queen to d2. So we go up here and maybe we threaten to trade the queens off. Something like that. All right, back a little bit further here. And we'll see where the crazy variations of this opening occur. So let me back it up. All right, from the beginning, e4, e5, knight to f3, we're attacking the pawn. And instead of protecting, they just bring this bishop to c5 here. So normally a beginner would, I don't know, maybe capture here. Then after knight to c6, we go ahead and capture. They capture. Then d3, knight to f6, bishop up to e2, h5, h3 to prevent pieces from landing here. The queen attacks. Now, what if they castled here? And it looks like white usually loses. I mean, this looks like a normal move here, castling. But let's see if we can figure out why this is so bad. The knight could jump into g4. Sometimes that's played. And black usually... Wow, white hasn't won any of those. Well, let's look at the first move that's played most often. Queen to e5. All right. Because now, you drop the bishop back and you're threatening a mate here. That might be a possibility. I guess that's king to h1 is played most often. Huh. Man, I don't know. After this move, all right, you can't push the pawn because of the pin here, and that's probably why the king wanted to move over, so they could attack the queen. So king to h1. Now the knight jumps in here, but we're able to play this, attacking the queen. Queen up to f6. Queen to e1 because of that maybe possible fork threat. Bishop up to d7. c3 to block the queen's attack here. And finally, knight to e3. Takes. And we can go ahead and capture this with a discovered attack on the bishop. But black ended up winning here. After bishop to b6, queen up to e2, queen to h4 lining up here. Oh, wow. And they recommend, well, in the game, this pawn was captured. Yeah, because, I don't know, this is looking pretty serious. They're lining up here. Oh, we have a bishop also lined up here. This bishop is preventing the king from running. So what do you do here? It's looking pretty bad. In the game, this was played. King captures. F5 blocks the scope of that bishop. Queen to g3. Queen up to f3. And that's as far as the game went. But if we look at this, it looks like black is ahead. We have 5 pawns versus what? Oh no, maybe it's even in material. Yeah, 5 pawns versus 8 pawns. So knight for bishop and bishop for 3 pawns. So I don't know. This Busch-Gass Gambit's kind of crazy. Feel free to leave comments, at any time if you've ever come across it, what you think of it. Let me go back to the actual Busch-Gass Gambit in the beginning. So capture, we capture the knight, and now the pawn is protected. So we're just developing pieces here. And the normal looking castling move apparently is pretty bad. So after that, knight to g4 can be played. And I think I may have come across this in one of my own games. So here they normally capture, capture, then should you actually take here? And this might be something to really check out. Analysis. Probably should turn on the analysis here and see what the computer says is actually going on. So e4, e5, knight to f3, the Busch-Gass Gambit. So here, this is a mistake. It says the computer, after this Busch-Gass Gambit move, that white is ahead. So after we capture, and then here, white is still ahead. And that's the best move according to the computer. Okay, and then after this, bishop to e2 is the way to keep the edge pretty good here. And now, after this move, is that the best move? It says that's an inaccuracy. That c3 would be better. Apparently c3 is a better move here. But if you play this and then the queen comes in threatening this mate, well, now you have what? Well, it says you can castle and you're still okay. So if we go ahead and castle, now what did it think of this knight move? So knight jumping in there says that's an inaccuracy. After capture, capture. Oh, and this is where it's tricky. The only move that works here, apparently, is g3. So I can see the appeal of this, playing this opening, because right now, the only thing that works is g3. So if we play g3, what do they recommend here? Queen to, rook to h3. Yeah, this kind of stops things. I mean, I think when I played something like this, they retreated the queen back and they tried to swing the queen over here to go for a mate down here. So if you do queen to e5, oh, once again, the only move here that works is bringing the king up. Then what? Rook to h3 is best. Bishop up to f4 attacking. Queen over to h5. And now you have to stop the attack by going here. Bishop up to east. Oh wait, wrong move. Apparently that is better. Queen to f1 is the best move. Man, yeah, just a lot of crazy stuff going on here. So, yeah, I would say the appeal of this opening is to just get a crazy attack going on white. And, this is just an introduction, so I'm not going to dive too deep into this opening. But, like I said, feel free to leave comments and let me know if you've come across this Busch-Gass Gambit. And, what you had to deal with. So here they could castle queenside. They're protecting this pawn, which, I guess I'm attacking. And then here, what? Capture. Queen captures, king to g1 with a discovered attack on their queen, queen to h5, not wanting to trade queens, and now queen up to g2 here to help protect everything. Of course, the rook comes over to grab the open file. And now what? We have to develop the knight, with maybe a threat of jumping over, attacking the bishop. King to b8. Knight. Oh, instead, we bring the knight up this way, because now we can drop back and develop our knight if the bishops are exchanged. So f5, and they recommend bringing our other rook over, rook to d1, or we could play c3, get ready to chase the bishop possibly. So let's say we do that, c3, queen up to f7, targeting this pawn. So now what? d4, attacking. Bishop up to d6. We exchange. And what now? E takes f5, or, well, yeah, it looks like that's what they want. That. Queen or bishop captures. Queen captures. And knight up to e3, attacking the queen and this pawn at the same time. So what now? Queen to g5. Okay. You get the idea. I won't dig too much deeper. We're going further and further into this. So once again, if we go back to the beginning, the Busch-Gass Gambit, e4, e5, knight to f3, and bishop to c5. That's the Busch-Gass Gambit. According to the computer, white should take this pawn, so capture, and then white is just ahead a pawn here. What are the options? Knight to c6. Apparently that's best. You could play d6, attacking the knight, but white just goes up a pawn here. So after knight to c6, if white wants to keep an advantage, well, they're already ahead, so they could trade off, but then that kind of opens the position up for black. Knight to f3 is probably a little bit safer than helping black develop faster. So, let's take a look at that. Knight to f3. Now you have what? Queen to e7 apparently is best, lining up on that pawn. And the computer recommends, instead of trying to protect the pawn, well, excuse me, with d3, it looks like just bishop to e2 and, getting ready to castle is preferred. d4 could be played to attack here. or knight to c3. But all those moves keep white ahead. I mean, we could look at this one. Bishop to e2. If the queen captures, which is best, material is even now, but we have knight to c3 helping white develop. The recommended move now is queen up to e7. Now we have d4. Bishop pins the knight. So we just castle. Now what? Knight to f6. Rook to e1 with a threat here. So castling. Bishop to d3, a discovered attack on the queen. The queen steps back. And now we have bishop up to g5, pinning the knight to the queen. And so there's a threat here of this knight jumping forward, adding to the pressure along with the bishop. So capture is recommended, recapture. So this is just a safer way that white could play instead of, and white, even though material is even here, it looks like white has an advantage, the equivalent of over a pawn advantage. Black maybe plays this. Then we have h3, limiting the scope of the bishop. Queen develops. And now what? Knight drops back with the idea of maybe pushing this pawn in the future. h6, we're under attack. Bishop to h4. All right. You have the idea here. This is just an example of how things could go. If we capture here, this is where things become a little more dangerous. The recommendation is to play c3, though. Then what? After queen to e7, we have queen to e2, protecting the pawn. Knight to f6. d4. Bishop drops back. And now the recommendation is just to play f3 and fortify this central pawn. So c5, d5, castle, c4. And here white just has a lot more space in the center. Also, white is ahead a pawn and should have the edge. So I would say, try out the Busch-Gass Gambit, see what you think. It depends how crazy you want to play. If you like gambits and attacking, then you could play this move. If they go here and you really want to open things up, you probably go that way. So if they take, well, now your bishop is opened up and there's some more attacking possibilities. I'll have to, this was just the intro. I'll have to do some further research on this and see, what else is out there. I haven't really found much on this opening. And that seems to be a trend these days where, because computers are being used so much, it seems like people are trying to find unusual openings that people haven't played before to catch them off guard in the opening. All right. Feel free to leave comments, like and subscribe to support the channel if you haven't already. Thank you for watching and have a super chess day.